We're here today in Mexico celebrating the 50th anniversary of the OECD, and we're here with the Insurance and Private Pensions Committee. And one of our guest speakers is Professor David Blake from the Cass Business School in London. Now, Professor Blake's been working on longevity risk and longevity bonds, but we gather there's a lot of reluctance from governments in the OECD countries to issuing these bonds. Could you explain why you think that is and how that could maybe be overcome?
Yes, I've tried to get governments to issue longevity bonds in order to hedge the systematic longevity risk that societies face. Private sector institutions can't hedge this risk without longevity bonds. But governments have been reluctant to issue longevity bonds because they feel that they've got enough longevity risk on their balance sheets already through state pension systems and the pension systems for public sector employees. And so they've been very reluctant to issue longevity bonds for that reason. They also think that the private sector must know a lot more about longevity risk than it does. So if it's asking the government to take on longevity risk, it can't be to the government's advantage to do so. And even on an operational level, governments have got to issue lots of bonds already to fill this huge funding deficit that they have, and they don't want that market distorted by issuing a new type of bond at this stage. So that's the real problem at the moment. But there are pressures around the world to do something about this. The IMF, the OECD, the World Economic Forum have come forward and proposed that governments do something about this. One solution might be that governments issue annuities at high ages. So, for example, over the age of 90, governments take over responsibility for paying pensions. That's one recommendation that's been put forward. But I still think that there's a problem with that because we don't know about pricing, we don't know about pricing longevity risk, we have models, but our models are imperfect. Ultimately, we need markets to price longevity risk, and ultimately that means that longevity bonds must be issued. The private sector isn't going to hedge the tail risk, and ultimately only governments, by issuing longevity bonds, can provide the price points for us to price longevity risk properly and determine an appropriate longevity risk premium that the government would earn itself by issuing longevity bonds. I don't know when that will happen, but it could be sometime in the future.